Hello everyone, Lyndon Miller here with LMK Farms again. Today we're going to talk about winter feeding, and it's been a long time since I've put out a video, but I was just thinking about this again as we were in winter, and though it's hard to make videos when it's cold, I decided to do this for you today. So anyway, there's one thing that all farmers love to do, and that is feed cattle. Doesn't matter where you're at, it seems like everybody does it, and so it must be the way to do it. The problem is it's also the largest expense of almost every cattle operation in America today. And oftentimes we forget to calculate in the expense of how much it really does cost us. So today I want to dive into that a little bit and explain why grazing the wintertime can be a game changer to your operation. So the first thing you're going to say is, well, that's great if you live in Florida or Alabama, but we live wherever. Well, yeah, I know. It is difficult when you have snow and nothing is growing, or seemingly nothing is growing. I live in Iowa, and there's not a lot that grows here in the wintertime when it's down below zero or whenever. But that doesn't matter. There is still opportunities to graze even through the snow if the snow's not too deep. So the biggest thing you have to remember is that there has to be something there after summer for the cows to eat. If there's nothing there after summer, of course, nothing's going to grow during the winter months to feed your cows. So you must leave residue there in order for your cows to have something to eat during the winter months as well. Here is a picture of what it looked like before I grazed in the wintertime. You can see a little bit of green grass underneath there, but not very much. It's mostly dead. But there's a lot of grass there to graze, and this might have been in a better area. I don't remember where I took this picture exactly, but overall there's still a lot of residue there to eat. Now this next picture, this is after I got done grazing, and you can see most of the grass is either trampled or eaten. There's not a lot there, but the ground is still covered. There's no soil left bare. If we did get a big rain event or something like that, that ground is very much protected, and there's no erosion going to take place because the ground is left bare to the sun or the weather. So again, good management in the summer of your grass, keeping enough there for winter grazing is obviously the key to being able to even think about doing winter grazing. Living in Iowa, I have a lot of access to corn stalks and cover crops to graze in the fall especially. This is an added expense, but at the same time, it does give my pastures a lot more of a break, so where I don't have to actually graze them until January to January 10th normally. So this does make winter grazing, winter feed stretch a long way when the grass is not actively growing. Now, when we do have a lot of snow, like we had this winter, we had 15 inches of snow, maybe more, and the cows could not eat through that. I was not going to make my cows eat through that. I know other people that did, and great, that's just great. I did not attempt to do that with my cows. I did feed them hay. So I had to buy some hay last winter because, as you know, I converted all my hay acres into pasture land, so I'd have enough stockpile at the end of my grazing growing season to be able to accommodate cattle through the winter time as well. But I bought enough hay to get me through the winter, probably more than I need, and that is actually not really a big expense because at the end of the winter, when I see that I'm going to have enough hay, everybody else is still feeding a lot of hay, and they're nowhere close to being done. So I can often sell that hay if I choose to for much higher price than what I paid for it in the summertime. That way, it really does cut down on my cost of my feed, my winter feed. So what's the benefit of doing this other than just cutting down expenses? Well, first of all, I only have to use a foaler and maybe a tractor to feed my cows all winter long. I have nothing else in that. I have no hay equipment. I don't need anything else. My foaler starts any weather. I don't need to plug it in or try to keep it from gelling up whenever it's below zero. I have very little equipment that's needed for my winter feeding compared to most cattle farmers around here. Think about the sheer number of dollars it takes to own all this equipment that most people just take for granted that, hey, we need this to feed our cows every year, every day, or at least during the winter months. And so they have all this equipment that's just to feed their cows, not to mention the haying equipment they might own to make the hay for the cows in the wintertime. And think about the expense of the breakdowns that you have to have just for all that machinery. That gets expensive. I know. I'm a farmer. Another plus is that I don't have to haul manure. My cows spread the manure for me. rather than having a bale ring full of manure around it or wherever. My cows just distribute it evenly across the pastures. Now when the spring thaw comes, guess what? I'm still out on pasture grazing. I don't have to deal with all this mud. I don't have to track up my pastures. My tractors aren't going through the mud. My cows aren't living in the mud around a bale ring or in a dry lot somewhere, or more or less a mud lot in this area. It's so much more relaxing and just enjoyable to see cows out on pasture grazing on sod that does not cause any foot rot or anything like that throughout the winter months. At the risk of making this video way too long and covering too much in one video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about grass quality and grass health. So grass it stores a lot of energy in the bottom 3 inches of the stem. Especially going into fall, this is important because that grass starts to put that nutrients down into the roots. If you graze it down below 3 inches before it goes dormant in the wintertime, you severely hinder that plant from being able to regrow the next spring. Now it will grow, but it's just going to be very much slower at taking off. And most farmers, if they've ever went through many winters, they've seen this in a pasture or hayfield that they happen to leave grow by accident or something. They've seen this happen, and they know what I'm talking about. This makes stockpiling grass for winter grazing a double benefit, just because your grass quality the next spring will be better. And I have proof to show how this works. So here is a picture of my daughter on April 5th. She was 2 years old. She's not very tall. And her boots, you can see the grass is about, 1.5 to 2 inches tall there. I searched for the very best grass I could find in this pasture. This is not my pasture. It's across the fence from me. About, maybe 3/4 mile from where my closest pasture would be. You can see the grass quality there. This is the best grass that I could find in this place. But he grazed it all fall, and he did not stockpile anything through the winter. This grass was just very stunted going into winter months. This is my pasture just across the road, about a 3/4 mile away. Similar type of soil type and everything. And I have not had any fertilizer on that. This was grazed in January. This is the very first piece I grazed. And the grass is at least twice as tall, and I didn't even search for it. I just stuck her out there and let her stand in it. The grass was much taller. This was April 5th of 2023. Now this next picture was at the other end of my grazing operation. I did not get this far by April 7th. This is April 7th, 2 days later, and I hadn't quite got there yet. So I went up there and I checked, see how tall my grass was that I was going to get to graze here in a few days. And I found, you can't quite see where my knee's at, but the grass is about 10 inches tall, maybe 12 inches tall there. New growth, same time of the year. What's the difference? The difference is simply that ground never froze. There was plenty of insulation with that old residue on top of the ground. It never froze, at least not nearly as deep as the other ground did. And I know this because I push posts in the pastures all year long. I can tell when the ground's froze or not. And all year long, I never had a problem poking posts in the ground where there was any kind of grass residue above the ground. Now, after I grazed it off, if I grazed it too hard, sometimes I'd have trouble pulling them back out. But there was never a problem pushing it in. So this is the difference. The ground never went dormant. The life in the soil was always there. By April 7th, that life had been active for obviously a couple weeks and growing new grass. This, folks, is money in your pocket. This is where production happens long before anybody else ever realizes it. So that's all for today, folks. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you have any other questions, just leave a comment below or subscribe to my channel if you care to.